For too long, the masculine has stood at a crossroads, torn between the remnants of outdated ideals and the quiet, persistent call towards something deeper. Conditioned to equate strength with silence and worth with productivity, many men have drifted into a state of emotional exile, disconnected from their own hearts and from the possibility of true, sacred union. But a shift is happening, a remembering, a refusal to remain on the sidelines of his own emotional and spiritual life. The masculine is done waiting. He no longer seeks control, conquest, or approval. He seeks union with the feminine, with the world, and most urgently, within himself. This is not a cry for dependency, but a reclamation of intimacy, a commitment to wholeness, a bold step out of isolation and into relational truth. Now is the time. He needs union, not as an escape, but as a return. The awakening of the conscious masculine. Something ancient is stirring within the masculine. It is not rage nor rebellion, but remembrance, a deep cellular knowing that the old scripts no longer serve. The mask of the untouchable man, the lone wolf, the emotionless provider, these identities are cracking. And through those fractures, light is breaking in. For too long, masculinity has been mistaken for suppression, of emotion, of softness, of need. Boys were taught to disconnect from their hearts in order to survive a world that feared their vulnerability. They learned to armor up, stay silent, push forward, and pretend. But the cost of that conditioning is becoming too great to bear. Isolation, burnout, broken relationships, emotional numbness. These are not marks of success. They are symptoms of a deeper spiritual dislocation. The conscious masculine is rising from this place. He is the man who no longer finds identity in performance, but in presence. He is no longer willing to define his worth by how much he can control, conquer, or suppress. Instead, he leans into a different kind of strength, the courage to feel, to reflect, to heal, to ask for help. His awakening is not weakness, it is power reclaimed at the level of the soul. This awakening is not about discarding masculinity. It is about embodying it more fully, more truthfully. The conscious masculine still carries direction, drive, and discipline, but these qualities are now rooted in something sacred. He leads from love, not ego. He holds space, not control. He listens as deeply as he speaks. He honors the feminine not as an accessory, but as an equal force of creation, within and outside of himself. He is learning that presence is more powerful than performance, that emotional fluency is not a threat to his strength, but the essence of it. That true intimacy begins when he stops running from himself, from others, from the fear of not being enough. And in this awakening, he is no longer content to wait for approval, permission, or the perfect moment. He seeks union now, not because he is broken, but because he is whole enough to know that we were never meant to do this alone. This is not a trend, it's a return. The conscious masculine is not an idea, it's a remembering of who he truly is beneath the layers of conditioning. And now, with eyes open and heart bare, he steps forward, not as a warrior of conquest, but as a steward of connection. From isolation to intimacy, why union matters. Now, modern masculinity has been marked by a quiet epidemic. Isolation, not always in the physical sense, but emotionally, relationally, spiritually. Many men have been taught that to be strong means to stand alone, to never ask for help, to handle it in silence. Friendships become shallow, romantic partnerships strained, and even one's relationship with self becomes distant, because intimacy, in all its forms, has been miscast as weakness. But beneath the armor, something deeply human still longs to be seen. The masculine is tired of pretending he doesn't need connection, tired of being the strong one who never gets to fall apart, tired of sleeping beside someone he can't emotionally reach. He is ready for union, not just with a partner, but with the full spectrum of life. Union is not dependency. It's not giving up his power. It's the deepest expression of it. It's choosing to be fully alive, fully present, fully human. True intimacy, whether with another person, a purpose, or the divine, requires that he show up with his whole self. No posturing, no roles, just truth. And that's the transformation. The shift from "I'm fine on my own" to "I choose to open, to merge, to co-create." This is not romantic desperation. It is spiritual readiness. In a world that rewards detachment and performance, choosing intimacy is revolutionary. It demands risk, vulnerability, surrender. But in that surrender, there is a profound return to self. Union becomes the mirror in which the masculine finally sees who he really is, not the mask he's worn, but the soul beneath it. He no longer seeks relationships that reinforce his loneliness. He no longer chases shallow validation or runs from emotional depth. He wants to be met fully, and he's ready to meet others the same way. This is why union matters now, because the time of fragmented living is over. The conscious masculine knows that to thrive, he must feel. To lead, he must connect. To be whole, he must choose intimacy over isolation, communion over performance. The world doesn't need more emotionally detached men. It needs grounded, embodied, heart-awake men who are no longer afraid of closeness. And that begins with the bold choice to step out of hiding and into union. The sacred dance of the masculine and feminine. There is a primordial rhythm at the center of all life, a cosmic choreography between the masculine and the feminine. This is not simply man and woman, nor is it confined to roles, biology, or behavior. These are archetypal forces, universal polarities that live in all of us and in all things. Together, they form the tension that births galaxies, the magnetism that ignites love, and the balance that sustains creation itself. But for centuries, this sacred dance has been fractured. The masculine was taught to lead without listening. The feminine was asked to surrender without safety. One pursued dominance, the other survived through adaptation. The result has been a collective imbalance, a war of energies masked as relationship, culture, and even spirituality. The dance became a struggle, the rhythm became rigid, and the union turned into a transaction. Yet something ancient is rising once again. The conscious masculine is waking up to the reality that domination, distance, and emotional detachment no longer serve him, or the feminine he longs to love and be loved by. He is beginning to see that the feminine is not something to control, tame, or figure out. She is a mystery to be revered, a force to be danced with, a reflection of the part of himself he abandoned to survive. In this awakening, the masculine no longer fears the intensity of her emotion, her chaos, her depth. Instead, he stands in presence, not to overpower, but to hold, not to silence, but to listen. He does not see her softness as fragility or her fire as threat. He sees both as sacred, necessary, alive, and he begins to feel the feminine within himself, his own intuition, his capacity to feel, to receive, to create without agenda. He stops shaming this part of himself. He begins to love it. He begins to integrate it, and in that integration, he becomes whole. This sacred union is not about reversing roles or flattening difference. It's about honoring polarity with maturity, reverence, and intention. It's about restoring the divine balance between being and doing, yielding and directing, nurturing and protecting. In right relation, the masculine becomes the structure in which the feminine flows freely, and the feminine becomes the inspiration that moves the masculine with purpose. In intimacy, this changes everything. Relationships stop being power struggles and become devotional practices. Sex stops being an act of release and becomes a merging of souls. Communication shifts from managing emotions to creating understanding. Conflict becomes a gateway to growth. The relationship becomes a temple where both partners are students of love, mirrors of truth, and allies in awakening. The masculine no longer seeks to be worshipped for his control. He longs to be met in his presence. He wants to be seen not as a protector who never feels, but as a man who holds space because he knows his own inner landscape. He wants to show up, not to fix, rescue, or possess, but to walk beside, to build something sacred, something real. And this isn't just about romantic union. The dance of masculine and feminine lives in all of us, regardless of gender or orientation. When we heal this polarity within, we heal it between us. The world doesn't need more division, it needs embodied union. The masculine rising in reverence for the feminine rising in trust of the masculine. Together, not as enemies, but as co-creators. This is the sacred dance. It is subtle and powerful, still and wild, anchored and alive. And the conscious masculine is no longer watching from the sidelines. He is ready to step in, barefoot, heart open, grounded in truth, moving in rhythm. Finally, fully here. Masculine sovereignty versus false independence. There is a myth woven deep into the fabric of the masculine psyche, that to be a man is to be self-sufficient, untouchable, and always in control. That independence is the highest form of freedom. That to need anyone, especially emotionally or spiritually, is weakness. For generations, men were praised for being stoic, detached, and impenetrable. But beneath that surface lies a painful truth. What was called independence was often just disconnection in disguise. This is the false independence, where a man carries everything alone, not because he has to, but because he believes he must, where he performs strength while secretly drowning in silence, where he fears vulnerability because he was never shown how to be safely held. In this illusion, the masculine becomes isolated, not sovereign, but severed. Sovereignty is something entirely different. Masculine sovereignty is not about going it alone. It's about owning one's life, one's choices, one's emotional landscape with radical integrity. It's about becoming deeply rooted in truth. Independent, yes, but also interconnected. Sovereignty means a man is no longer ruled by his past, his trauma, or the expectations placed on him by a culture that fears his softness as much as his power. He no longer reacts from ego or avoidance. He responds from clarity, presence, and deep self-awareness. A sovereign man knows he is whole, but also that wholeness includes openness. He can stand firmly in himself and still reach out. He can lead without control, love without losing himself, and receive without shame. He doesn't need to prove his strength by isolation. His strength is proven in his capacity to be with his own emotions, with others in their truth, with life in its fullness. False independence says, I don't need anyone. Sovereignty says, I choose who and what I align with, fully and consciously. False independence shuts down to avoid pain. Sovereignty opens to move through pain and transmute it into wisdom. False independence hides. Sovereignty reveals. False independence performs. Sovereignty embodies. In relationships, this shift is profound. The sovereign masculine doesn't enter union out of lack or neediness, nor from a place of dominance or fear. He comes as a whole being ready to co-create. He is not looking for someone to save or someone to save him. He's looking for a partner who reflects his truth, sharpens his purpose, and meets him in the sacred work of love. And because he is no longer enslaved to the illusion of rugged self-reliance, he can be deeply present, deeply connected, and deeply free. The world does not need more men cut off from their hearts in the name of independence. It needs men rooted in sovereignty, anchored in themselves, open to union, and willing to walk the path of true relational maturity. This is the final threshold in the masculine's awakening, the reclamation of his power, not through detachment, but through embodied connection. It is the end of the lone wolf and the rise of the conscious man who is both grounded and open, clear and compassionate, sovereign and surrendered. Because true freedom is not found in separation. It's found in choosing connection with full awareness of your own power. And he is ready now to live, love, and lead from that place.